Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm Mary Jo Daniel, the Director of the Faculty Research Development Office. And on behalf of the Office of the Vice President for Research, I want to welcome you all here this morning. We're very pleased to have a visitor from the National Science Foundation. Dr. Karen Marrongelle is the Assistant Director of NSF for Education and Human Resources, that's EHR. And she leads the EHR Directorate in supporting research that enhances learning and teaching to achieve excellence in U.S. science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. Prior to joining NSF, Dr. Marrongelle was Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Portland State University and Professor of Mathematics and Statistics. In addition to her work as Dean, she served as a faculty member in the department since 2001. And prior to that, she held positions as Vice Chancellor for Academic Strategies and Assistant Vice Chancellor for Academic Standards and Collaboration with the Oregon University System. Dr. Marrongelle has a bachelor's degree in math and philosophy from Albright College, a master's degree in math from Lehigh University, and a doctorate in math education from the University of New Hampshire. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Karen Marrongelle.
Thank you all. Thanks so much. I'm so delighted to be here with all of you today. I very much appreciate the invitation to come and spend some time with you on your beautiful campus and learn more about the exciting programs that you have going on. And I'm thrilled that it's first generation proud day. I am a first generation college graduate, so I love that you're recognizing your students who are first gen as well. So I want to make sure that I leave a lot of time for you to ask questions and we can have some discussions. What I hope to do today in the talk is just bring you up to date on some of the things that are priorities for us and that we've been working on in the Directorate for Education and Human Resources at the National Science Foundation. And just a real quick, NSF turns 70 next year, and it is the only federal agency whose mission is to support fundamental basic research in science and engineering and education. And so the education mission of NSF has been there right from the beginning, and we're so proud of the 70 years of work that we have done. What I want to talk to you about today is to give you a little context for some of how we shape our priorities. Our priorities are shaped by doing this, by coming out and talking to the field, myself, all of my amazing staff, just listening and trying to keep a pulse on the current trends that are happening in education throughout the country. But I want to tell you a little bit about a strategic plan for STEM education that is guiding all of the federal agencies who support STEM education. And then I want to talk a little bit about NSF's 10 big ideas, and hopefully some of you are familiar with some of them, but they have been guiding a lot of the work that we're doing at NSF for over the last several years. And then very specifically, I want to talk to you about some of where we're headed with education and education research for the future. And so I'm going to talk about the specific divisions in the EHR just a little bit at the end because it's just bureaucratic. But you should know about our directorate that we fund all types of STEM education, research and development from little babies, and we do studies on little tiny babies and know what they're thinking about science and number, all the way through to workforce development. So how, in particular today, in today's world, we are doing a lot of thinking about how we can reskill the current STEM workforce. And we study things in formal school settings, like on this campus or in the high school down the road, but also in informal environments. So we have a long history of funding PBS shows, museum exhibits, radio programming, all sorts of out-of-school type activities. So let me tell you a little bit about this 5-year strategic plan for STEM education. This was released last December 2018 by the White House, and the White House has an Office of Science Technology Policy. We work closely with them. This is following up on the first 5-year STEM Ed strategic plan, which sunsetted just a couple of years ago. And this strategic plan has three high-achieving goals: to build strong foundations for STEM literacy, to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in STEM, and then to prepare the STEM workforce of the future. The plan was developed with a lot of stakeholder input, which for a a federal plan like this was pretty unique. A lot of these things get produced by the federal government in collaboration with other federal agencies. But for this education plan, we went out and held listening sessions, brought folks into DC to talk with us about what should be the goals and what should be the pathways for meeting these goals. So there was a lot of stakeholder input into this. So we want to ensure, just building on this, that all students, no matter where they come from, no matter their backgrounds, where they're born, they have opportunities to succeed in STEM. They are given opportunities to further their education in STEM if they so choose, and most importantly, they have opportunities to become literate citizens in STEM. That's incredibly important to us. With our second goal, we know that our STEM workforce currently does not reflect the diversity of the United States, and we want to change that. We want to make sure that we are taking steps so that our STEM workforce of the future will reflect the diversity of the US. And then finally, in addition to thinking about diversity of the future STEM workforce, we know that science itself is changing so quickly because of technology and because of the rapid advances that we're making. And we want to ensure that education today is preparing students for the STEM issues of tomorrow so that we can continue making the discoveries in STEM that the US has been known for. I'm just going to quickly reference this. There are many layers to this plan, but to get to the three goals that I mentioned, we orient our work around 4 pathways, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of those 4 pathways. And again, so you get a sense of what the federal agencies are doing together, and this is NSF, this is our colleagues at NASA, NOAA, there's 14 federal agencies that work together on this. We're aligning our efforts to make sure that we try to reach these goals around these pathways. And the little objectives thing at the bottom are things that the agencies ourselves are tasked to do. And so if this report's available online, so if you want to read more about it, you can certainly do that. One of the pathways is to develop and enrich strategic partnerships. And I was a program officer at NSF 10 years ago, so I'm kind of doing my second round at NSF because I love it so much and it's such an amazing place to work. And I was very pleasantly surprised when I came back around the focus on partnership. So not only at the federal government level, but within the agency, we have an agency priority goal, which is helping kind of push our partnership work forward. And within STEM education, a priority for all of the federal agencies is to develop more partnerships. I think we realized over the years that we can make education more effective when we're partnering with community organizations, with industry and business, with different educational sectors. Those partnerships are key to making sure that we're providing the most up-to-date information to our students, but also the types of pedagogy to our students that is going to click with them and enable them to keep their interest in STEM. And so this pathway really focuses on strengthening both existing relationships that you might have or growing some new ones. And another part of this, the word ecosystem comes up in a lot of the discussion of this pathway. And so we're hoping to see more blending of both the formal and informal learning environments for students. And that could take a number of different forms. On a campus like yours, it could be your co-curricular and curricular activities, but as you think about the broader community in which you're situated, there are likely community groups, research that's important to the people around you who live here, that it will be important to connect with and to ensure that your students are getting those seamless experiences with. Another pathway is engaging students where disciplines converge. And convergence, I think I did not hear this word, maybe a dozen times in my life, and then I started at NSF last October, and I hear it every day. Convergence is a big thing for us. I'm not going to get into the details about how this is alike or different from interdisciplinarity or transdisciplinarity. Everybody has their favorite way of envisioning this. But we want to see disciplines working together is kind of the bottom line. And what the plan highlights is that it's important that we have strong foundations in the individual disciplines in STEM, but it's equally as important that students understand how their math, for example, applies to their science, or how their science is motivating new ways of thinking about data. So convergence is critically important. We know that in order to solve the most pressing problems of our time, we can't just have siloed single approaches. We need teams working together, and this has been proven over and over again. The Event Horizon Telescope project that imaged the first black hole could not have happened with just a physicist team. It needed an entire team of computer scientists and data analysts and mathematicians and statisticians and physicists and astronomers working on this problem. So we know that in order to solve these big grand challenges, we have to prepare students to not only be able to work in teams together, but to also understand how to translate among the different disciplines. The third pathway very specifically focuses on computation, and even just this week, there were a number of different computationally related just high-level discussions happening. The White House's chief technology officer made a plea to Europe that we need to work together on 5G and AI. Senator Schumer unveiled a proposal saying that we really need to spend upwards of $120 billion over the next 5 years on AI in order to ensure that America is staying ahead. So this is a big deal. We know that we're not doing enough to educate our students to become computationally literate, either for STEM jobs or just to be good citizens. And so this pathway highlights the work that needs to be done. In our schools today, we need to think about the technology that students are coming into school knowing how to use and knowing how to interact with. We need to be sure that they're prepared to deal with technology that has infiltrated and advanced really all of the scientific enterprise. And so this pathway is highlighting that importance and calling out the reasons why we need to do this. At NSF, one of our programs that's tightly aligned with this is the Computer Science for All program, and this develops researcher-practitioner partnerships, specifically to help prepare educators in high schools to teach rigorous computer science courses to students in high school. But I would have to say that a lot of this work has to start before high school, and our students are already getting it outside of school. So we need to really critically re-examine what are we doing even in the K-8 space with students to ensure that we're capitalizing on the skills that they have outside of school, and we're bringing them into the school day. And then I just want to mention this one just so that you know that we do take operating with transparency and accountability very seriously. And so I have been pushing, especially on this pathway, ways that we can make information to you, our communities, and the users of the information that we provide much more easy for you to find. So, for example, we just provided recently kind of a one-year update to the strategic plan, what have all the federal agencies been doing, and in the appendix to that plan, we have listed all of the STEM education programs across federal agencies and how they align with the goals the 3 goals that I listed out for you in that initial slide. So we are trying to do more work like that to make it easier for you to access the programs that we have within the federal government. And we're pushing on some other levers around transparency and accountability, holding ourselves accountable for how we're moving the needle on some of these critical issues. So that's all I want to say about that plan. Again, you can look it up to learn more. A few years ago, NSF kicked off and launched this idea of NSF's 10 Big Ideas. And these are bold, long-term research ideas that identify areas for future investment and really to be at the frontiers of science and engineering. These big ideas focus on some of the most pressing problems in science, engineering, and education. And by design of these, they require multidisciplinary teams and convergent, there's that word again, convergent approaches. And this is another reason why it's so important to give our students those experiences. Already, all of these big ideas have been launched. All of them are in their 2nd or 3rd year of going through solicitations and making awards. And these, by design, have involved other federal agencies, private foundations, and the science community writ large, in addition to the education sector. I'm going to highlight just a few of these to call your attention to and tell you about how EHR sees itself in some of these big ideas. we're in all of them. So there is education related to all of these big ideas. So that's not to say if I'm not mentioning one that I don't think it's important. I could spend 2 hours talking about these. But a few that I want to highlight, one is the future of work at the human technology frontier. And this is a very exciting big idea. Education, my directorate, has been quite involved in this, and every project that comes through here, we're thinking about what is the future of work going to look like, what are the advances that we can rapidly make in work today, and what is the education and training that people are going to need in order to adapt to these new workplaces. So for instance, we funded some projects that are experimenting with exoskeletons so that humans using an exoskeleton can work more effectively and efficiently on factory floors, and it's providing a safer environment for them. But in addition to the physical, some of the new ways of thinking about integrating things like exoskeletons and AI into the work is really being our cognitive partner as well. And that's, I think, a space that is incredibly exciting, and especially exciting for the education sector. So as AI continues to evolve, and rather than just being a place that we go to on our phone to look up the answer to something, technology will now enable us to think with it. And we need to think about the implications of that, both for what work will look like, but what our schools are going to look like. Because what's possible for students is really going to blow wide open. So we really need to also critically examine the work of teaching in this context of the future of work. The future of teaching work is going to change because of the advances in AI, and I think it's going to change in some exciting ways. All of these projects, there was a PI meeting last spring at NSF, and I was so pleased. I went to the poster session, and every single project, no matter if it was dealing with how firefighters can more safely fight fires, or making specific advances in the future of some particular part of science, education was part of all of these projects. So there's a huge overlap with the work that we do in education. The other big idea that I want to mention is harnessing the data revolution. And this is a kind of a visionary national scale activity to enable new mechanisms for data-driven discovery and innovation. And this vision involves research in data science, advanced cyber infrastructure, education, and workforce development. And the amount of data that we're generating in educational platforms, educational systems, has a whole host of issues related to it. There are ethics and privacy issues related to these data systems, but there's also the opportunity to think about how these data can be used to have personalized learning for students, learning that's going to fit into the lives of our students today, and work with the individuality of the student. Now more than ever in the history of education, we have possibility to provide personalized instruction on a very large scale, and we can do that by working through harnessing the data revolution. So there are some exciting opportunities here in the education field to think not only about how we revolutionize education itself, but also how we train students to work with this amount of data, including some of the critical issues, as I mentioned, around ethics and bias that comes along with data, because those are very important. And we have a small but growing portfolio that's addressing some of these ethical and bias issues in data management. And I want to talk to you for a little bit about the big idea that my directorate stewards, which is NSF includes. And this is our big, bold vision to scale up great work that we know that's happening around the country to diversify and broaden participation in STEM. So as I mentioned earlier, we know that our current STEM workforce, the diversity of our current STEM workforce does not match the diversity of the United States. And further, we know that for so many students, those opportunities to succeed in STEM have not been there for them. We also know that there are pockets of excellent practice happening all over the place. There are local instances where projects and people are making a difference for students. But what we haven't seen is a larger scale moving the needle on diversity, equity, and inclusion in STEM. And so NSF includes is our bold idea to lift up and, using a collective impact approach, scale up the work that we know is working in these pockets. So what we're doing in NSF includes, we started out several years ago by funding 70 design and development launch pilots, and these were meant to do some scale-up testing of innovations and projects that are known to work at a local level and see if we can scale them up within their communities. And then we funded, we now currently have 8 alliances. NSF includes alliances around the country that are supported by a hub backbone. And this community continues to grow. We have something like, like 10,000 partners that are involved in NSF Includes, and we've reached over 35,000 participants in NSF Includes to date. And this has been going on just for about 3 years. So we are, forward this. We funded alliances in 2 rounds over the last 2 years, and this year we're taking a break from funding alliances, and what we want to do is fund some planning grants. So if there are ideas, and I think just in the short time I've had to talk with some of you today on campus, I think there are several ideas that could be wonderful opportunities for planning grants. These proposals are due in December and July. We have 2 dates for these planning grants this year. And if there are interventions, if there are programs and projects that are working, that you know are making a difference to broaden participation in STEM, but you need to figure out how do we get the word out, how do we have a bigger impact, this is exactly the program that you should be looking at. So these planning grants will then help you figure out what would work in a scale up, and then what would help you prepare for a bigger alliance program. As I mentioned, we have 8 alliances now funded throughout the country, and we also have a national network. And this is where our backbone organization has been invaluable to us. So anyone can join the national network. In addition to NSF, we also have 5 other federal agencies who've signed on so that our community has access to NASA, to NIH, to the Department of Ed, to NOAA, to USGS, and that their projects and programs can interact with the community that NSF has been fostering and growing. The Boeing company joined NSF Includes. They're focused on getting more women and women veterans into their workforce, and so they were our first industry partner to join. That's at the big, broad national level. At the local level, we have many other partners, as I mentioned, about 10,000. And so there's a website, which is listed here at the bottom, includesnetwork.org, where you can find out more information. The hub has been hosting webinars. And webinars not just about how do you write a successful NSF proposal, but webinars that are getting the information out. Oh, we found out that this program in this part of the country is working for this population of students. If you want to learn more about this, come here and listen to this webinar. So they are really enacting the type of work that we envisioned that a big national network focused on broadening participation in STEM would do. NSF Includes is kind of the icing on the cake, so to speak, of the work that we do at NSF, though it's nowhere near complete. The work of broadening participation in STEM has really underpinned everything that we do in the Education and Human Resources Directorate. And so we have many opportunities for broadening participation. And I just wanted to mention that we collected all of these and put these together, my staff member told me to let you know that you can find this compilation on the NSF website in the Document Library tab under EHR. Hopefully that will be helpful. And we published this in early October, but this brings together all of the different programs that we have in EHR to broaden participation and helps explain why you might apply to one with an idea versus another one. So we hope that this will be helpful to the community. So I now want to turn just to spend a few minutes talking to you about education and education research for the future. And I've already hinted on some of these themes in my comments already. So as you know, as I told you, we support really everything in the education space. And we're always looking to contribute to new knowledge in education. And so there's a lot of work to be done in really figuring out more about For instance, why are fractions still so hard for students to learn? And I know this as a differential equations faculty member. When students would come into my DE class, they would still have trouble with rational number that even when they got through calculus and were successful there, surfaced in my differential equations class. And we know that this is true for other topics in science, other topics in engineering, and spans really the grade range. We've made some great advances. We know a lot about early number learning with children. We can map that out. We know exactly the markers to look for, but there is a lot that we still don't know about cognition and learning that can and should be informing our teaching practices at all levels and in all of the areas of STEM. So we have a lot of foundational problems still to work on, and we are one of only 2 federal agencies that funds this type of work, and we fund about 90% of it. So all of that basic research about learning and teaching in STEM disciplines really is coming, the large majority is coming from NSF. In addition to some of those fundamental issues that we have to keep pressing on, we also need to think about the future. And we need to seriously think about how we should be setting up our education systems, how the systems need to change, what are even the concepts and ideas that students are going to need to grapple with because of the advances in technology and science for the future. And so we are looking to think about how we enable education researchers and educators to open up spaces to imagine what school could look like in the future. So I just talked about persistent problems, and related to the future, a very exciting initiative that just got launched this fall that I want to point out is the Artificial Intelligence Research Institutes. So this is a new program coming out of NSF. It involves all of the directorates at NSF, and it also involves the USDA, the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate, the Federal Highway Administration, Department of Transportation, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. So this is a cross-federal government and across all of NSF initiative. And the idea around these AI institutes is to bring together, again, teams, you're hearing a theme here, to work on some of the big, most pressing problems in AI. And you can see, hopefully you can read this, there's a list of bullets of the particular areas in AI that we're interested in, trustworthy AI, foundations of machine learning. But the one that I'm most excited about is AI augmented learning. And this is the future that we need to be paying more attention to. So with the advances in AI, there are two things about that are going to impact education. Both the changes in curriculum that our students are going to need to be exposed to in order to thrive in an AI-enabled world, and the changes to education itself that will come about because of AI. We need to be actively pursuing these edges of AI science, and I am so pleased that in this initial call for AI institutes, AI augmented learning is one of the specific AI institutes that we're looking to fund. In addition to these AI institutes, I mean, this is not the only place to do this type of work. Many of our programs in EHR will fund work that is pressing on the edges of what technology and science is advancing to. And yes, and in particular in our core research program, which I wanted to be sure to mention to you, the solicitation deadlines are on here. It passed for this year, but we have an October 1st deadline for next year. This is the program in which we do the fundamental research in education. And we support all sorts of research questions here. I want to point out, this has been my favorite picture of late. Just to give you an example of the kinds of research that we would fund through this. This is Sapna Sharan, who's a associate professor of psychology at University of Washington. She was doing these very innovative tests of, so her big question was, how can we get more girls to sustain in computer science? So computer science, as you probably know, is one of the fields where we have a large gender disparity in terms of females advancing to get degrees and then advancing into the workplace. And she wanted to unpack, are there psychological and sociological reasons for this? And she found through a series of work that we funded through our EHR core research program that making small changes to the environment. So the posters on a wall, or what the actual computing environment looked like, would maintain and retain students, female students in computer science, and would not have a negative impact on males. Another research project out of our core research program, and because of her work in this area, so let me explain what's going on in this picture. Mattel tapped her to serve on an advisory committee to develop new Barbie dolls, and so they developed a computer science Barbie doll, and an engineer Barbie doll, and an homage to Hidden Figures in the middle. So, I mean, this is just some of the amazing ways. So her work is very fundamental. Yet, while she is testing out some of these particular changes and innovations, she's doing a lot of her work in a lab-type setting, and it may have impacts, tomorrow. But it may not have impacts for another 10 or 20 years, and I want to just emphasize that with our core research program, this really is the only place to go in the country, within the federal government, to do that type of testing out at the basic fundamental stage. So we're proud of this program. We're certainly proud of SAVNA. All right, and then I said I would tell you a little bit about our divisions. So just so you know how we're organized. There are 4 divisions within the Education and Human Resources Directorate. The Division of Research on Learning in Formal and Informal settings is our place where we fund research working with K-12 teachers and students, including professional development at the pre-K through 12 level, and where we also have our signature program that focuses on informal science education. And so this funds programs like SciGirls and the Magic School Bus, and also funds museum exhibits. We have programs in here that are focused on computing, like Innovative Technology Experiences for Students and Teachers, which works with high school, or K-12 teachers, can connect them up with professionals in the STEM fields, kind of a whole variety of programs there. But if you're doing something in the K-12 space, this is most likely the place that you'd be going. Our Division of Undergraduate Education focuses on research and development, including curricular design, some funding for instrumentation at the undergraduate level. And so many of our programs here are generating new knowledge and testing new interventions and ideas about how we best educate students at the undergraduate level. And then our Division of Graduate Education has several of our very highly visible scholarship programs. So the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, I'm going to say something about that in a moment. Our Scholarship for Service Program, I know that you have one of those awards here on your campus. And our NRT, our NSF Research Traineeship Program. We are also starting to press into a new field of studying effective innovations at the graduate level. So taking education research and applying it to what is working at the graduate level to keep students retained and to ensure that they're getting the most effective graduate education possible. So that is also a direction in which we're really trying to grow the community because it's a very nascent community. I mentioned the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, and I encourage you to encourage your students, especially your undergraduates, to apply for this program if they're thinking about graduate school. This is the oldest federal fellowship program that directly supports graduate students in the STEM fields. We have had 43 Nobel laureates to date who have at some point in their careers received a GRFP. So it's a very prestigious program. It's one that we're very proud of, and we certainly want to continue to grow the community who's applying to this program because we know there are so many phenomenal students that are out there. And then our Division of Human Resources Development provides support to grow the innovative U.S. STEM workforce by supporting the inclusion and success of individuals who are currently underrepresented in STEM and who may not have had the opportunities to succeed in STEM. So this division includes programs like the Hispanic Serving Institution program, like the Tribal Colleges and Universities program, but also programs like the Louis Stokes Advancement for Minority Participation in Science, which has received many accolades for the outcomes of the work that it has done. Over close to 700,000 students underrepresented students have received their STEM degrees because of their participation in that program. advance as part of our human resources development division. And we continue to work across the entire directorate to parse out those questions in education where we can work together to try to find solutions. All right, this is my last slide. I also need to mention that we also award careers in EHR. So for education researchers on your campus, the career program is one that I highly encourage them to apply to. This is, as you likely know, it's a foundation-wide program, so there are career awards in all of the directorates, but we especially want to make sure that we're sustaining and growing the career awardees in educational sciences. And then my last point to you is, please think about coming to NSF. It is an amazing place to work. I loved it so much that I came back for a second round. But it is a place where you get to interact with absolutely incredible individuals across the entire country and have a hand in shaping the future directions that we're moving in science, engineering, and education. So I would be happy to talk to you about that, and any program officer that you know would also be happy to talk with you. We are hiring right now in our Division of Research on Learning and our Division of Graduate Education for program officers. So if you even have an inkling, please reach out, because it really is an incredible experience. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope I left enough time for questions and discussions.
Thank you. We do have time for questions, and so I hope you will ask yours. Here's your chance. Go ahead, Tom.
Hi.
And would you please say who you are?
My name is Tom Turner, and I'm the Associate Dean for Research in the College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm also a professor in the biology department. Is there new money for AI at NSF right now? Is Congress giving you guys some new money?
So we are working under a continuing resolution right now. So no, there's, at the very exact moment right now, no, there is not new money, but we have all pledged, all of the directorates have pledged monies to undertake this. It is part of our, we are hoping, I actually haven't looked, we have our House and Senate markups, and I don't know where AI, I just haven't had a chance to figure out what Congress has put into that. But all of the directorates are committed to this. So we are putting our monies in, and we are hopeful that we may get additional monies to support it.
So at this time, you're taking money for special programs out of existing programs? Or like essentially that's what's happening. But we have been getting more and more proposals coming in around AI. So, but yes, that's currently what's happening.
Okay.
Hi, I'm America Vista for STEAM Mexico, and I was wondering, when you talked about interdisciplinary, did you mean, I know you mentioned math and physics, but do you also mean the inclusion of arts and humanities as well?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So I hope that it would. At NSF, we tend to be very focused on the sciences, and the sciences broadly include many of the social sciences as well, so economics, political science, psychology, sociology. We do less explicitly with the arts and humanities, but I'm a firm believer that we need those diverse perspectives in the work that we do. It's important culturally, most importantly, if not most importantly. So yes, I think there is space for that. How that would look like in our current funding portfolio, I wouldn't be able to tell you that right at the moment. But I think for many of us, our broad thinking must include the arts and humanities.
I have another.
Well, Steve gets to go first.
Steve Cavanis, Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology. So how does your division feel about and support the production and distribution of open educational resources?
So kind of like we would do with any project. So we don't have any special emphasis or focus on OERs, open educational resources, but we certainly fund projects that are moving forward the development of specific OERs. The only exception to that I will call out is, in addition to Boeing joining the NSF Includes National Network, we also had a collaboration with the Boeing company just this past fiscal year, in which they provided $10 million to us to run a competition to develop online open access resources to retrain STEM workers, but particularly in mechatronics and software engineering. So that had some very specific language around it because of our partnership with Boeing, and then we are also on top of that studying that. But otherwise, with that one exception, through our IU's program, there's probably some portfolio in there around OERs, but we haven't made specific calls, and it's certainly not a requirement, at least not at this point.
Okay, Tom.
So I had a quick question about how EHR interacts with EPSCoR, and whether that's a focus in EHR to sort of bring the data literacy, computational literacy to EPSCoR states.
Yeah, so of course we have a good, good relationship with EPSCoR. I don't know that it's all that different from the other directorates. In my directorate, we do have one of our fundamental missions is to reach institutions who have not been well represented at NSF, and that oftentimes matches up with EPSCoR geography. So we do some of that in concert with EPSCoR, but a lot of that we do on our own. So where we decide to go on site visits, we do analyses of, oh, hey, we just did this recently for our HBCU Up program. So we looked at, we did an analysis to see who's not submitting grants, who's submitting but not getting, not being successful, and that helps determine our locations for the institutions we want to reach out to. So we do some of that in consult with EPSCoR, but then we kind of have our own mission that drives a lot of that work. That's a great question.
Other questions? I have one. Oh, go ahead.
My name is Yan Chen. I'm postdoc in the Learning Science program. I'm not affected yet, so I'm wondering, are there any voluntary opportunities for young scholars and graduate students to get involved with EHR?
That's a great question. As a postdoc, certainly being on a review panel, yes. So, and you should do that, and I can kind of give you further instructions on how to do that. Graduate students, it's a little bit harder. I think graduate students get involved with the work that EHR funds mostly through the grants that come through universities and working on those grant type projects. There's nothing formal that we have in place in EHR. Graduate students would not be able to serve on review panels for us. But certainly kind of at the local level, at the institutional level, there are those opportunities. But for postdocs, yes, absolutely, you should get on a review panel. Yes.
So you talked about partnerships, and how do you partner with the Department of Ed? And where's the line between Department of Ed funded things and education things from NSF?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Department of Ed is huge. They have their total money eclipses ours in EHR certainly, but most of it is given out to states and block grants. So putting that aside, we partner with them in two ways. With their, let me talk about the easier way first. So they have a division, an Institute of Educational Sciences, or IES, that funds educational research. But again, they fund, it's not just STEM, they fund everything. So research on reading, special ed research, adult learning research. So we do some partnership with them. In the past, we've actually run some joint programs with IES. Now we do more of information sharing at this point, and a lot of times because they're looking to fund bigger randomized control trials. We do fund randomized control trials, but what makes us unique is that we also fund just that first stage, hey, I've got this idea, I need to test this out type research. And so oftentimes there's the flow that PIs will get funded from us to do some early stage proof of concepts. And then when they're at the point of getting to a randomized control trial, they could get funding from us, but they could also get funding from IES. So that's a way that we share a lot of PIs in that space. And when I quoted that 90% number, the funding for IES itself, I can't remember what it's at, but we've done a kind of tried to do some analysis and breakdown, and they spend about 10% of the full federal funding out of IES's budget on basic STEM ed research. So that's one way. And then with our colleagues in the department itself, we all sit on the Federal Coordinating Commission for STEM Education. So that was the 5-year strategic plan that I mentioned in the beginning. So we partner on stuff that's not very explicit. So we have interagency working groups that are focused on these pathways. So figuring out how the different federal agencies are going to line its work together so that we're not overlapping, but we're complementing each other. So we work with our colleagues in the Department of Ed that way. Department of Ed is a partner in NSF Includes, and we've been fleshing out what that means. So they have access to states and state leaders and state influence that we don't. So they're a very important partner for us in, I think, in the flow of like when we have innovations that are working or we have information that needs to get out. We historically have not partnered with them on some of that, but I see that as a hope that I have for their joining NSF Includes. I think it is of particular note that it's the department that will be a partner in NSF Includes because they do have these massive networks, and they're going to bring all of that to the table. So those are some of the ways that we're partnering specifically with them, and we do a lot of talk. It's been amazing to me. Every week I'm on the phone several hours with my colleagues from other federal agencies. So there's a lot of crosstalk behind the scenes with our federal partners.
Any other questions? I'm practicing my wait time.
Very good.
Okay, then we want to thank you very much.
Thank you.